We're, g- we're going to leave this podium here in the center. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome this evening to the special election debates. We are here at the Vinewood Bowl, and the debates tonight are going to be presented by the Election Commission in association with CNT this evening. I am Nigel Worcestershire of CNT. Joined to my right here is Alex Payne of Weasel. Good evening, Mr. Payne. I appreciate you joining us this evening as well.
Thanks for having me, Nigel.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, getting the debates underway tonight, we're going to have a maximum of 90 seconds for the asking of the questions to our candidates this evening. We're going to have a maximum of 5 minutes for the candidates to answer the questions for us. We'll also have 3 minutes of debate for the candidates and 2 minutes of leeway for direct questions and responses to be asked between themselves. It is mine and Mr. Payne's discussion of how we will allow those direct questions to go, and we will ask the candidates to please raise their hands if they would like to ask a direct question. And without further delay, ladies and gentlemen, since we have you waiting, Mr. Payne and I will get the special election debates underway, and we appreciate you joining us. All right. The first question is going to be directed at candidate Ash Keller.
So,
Mr. Keller, do you see the need to strengthen investigative powers in the business?
like in general,
Absolutely. Do you see the need for businesses to have more investigative tools, maybe into their own employment?
I mean, whatever supports industry, so yeah, as long as it's not coming from the government and them constantly just, putting a fucking, what's the word, microscope on, like, everything.
Absolutely. Well, a thing like this would have to come through the legislature.
I mean, no.
Gotcha. So limited government support.
Obviously.
Correct. All right, and we will send it. Do you have any responses to that question from yourself, Miss Storm? Do you have anything you would like to add
I
before
would
we move on
say
here?
Howdy, good eye
that I
keeping,
feel like
or good job
businesses should
keeping
have
an eye on
that
the
and
tent.
be able to operate within what they feel is right for their business with support from the government, but not necessarily like Cash said, like micromanaging from the government. So support, but not overreaching support.
Oh, it'd be awesome if we could
I'm
hear
pretty
back
sure we're on
here.
the same page there. I mean, that's kind of what I was trying to say. I'm just not sure if that's the way the
We can
question
hear
was
you down
posed.
at the vending.
Absolutely. And then candidates, make sure you're speaking up as loud as you can, okay, for all the folks in the back to be able to hear your wonderful responses to these questions. And we appreciate your responses here this evening. And we will send it over to Weasel News' Alex Payne for the next question.
Alrighty. Candidate Andre Storm, can you hear me just fine?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right, so the question's going to be, do you feel that working for the government should be profitable?
No, not financially profitable for the person working for the government. That's not the goal at all.
I see. Mr. Keller,
Yeah.
what do you feel about
sorry?
the question? The question?
Would you restate the question, please?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I was lighting a joint.
Oh my. Okay. Do you feel that working for the government should be profitable?
I mean, I think that it's just like common sense that people need to make a living. So, I think in any aspect of working for anything, you need to be making something out of it, but not to the point where it's literally driving money away from industry and people that need it more. Like, a regular salary is fine, taking everything and being in the top 1% and exploiting your position of power to take everything from this state. I think it's kind of fucked. So,
Okay. Off the CNT? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Nigel, you gotta speak up, bro.
Yeah, we're having trouble hearing you, Nigel.
I apologise.
That's
Back
alright.
to you, Mr. Keller.
Much better.
Absolutely, I do apologise. Now that we've cleared that up, I'm projecting a little bit better. Back to you, Mr. Keller. Candidate Keller, you were a state representative once, and you've been accused of being an absentee from that duty while you were in office. What would make this time running different for you?
I mean, I think it's understandable that we are now in a position of further neglect from the government compared to where we were half a year ago when I was actually in office or around then. I think it's really important that we take an active role now. I think that while these allegations aren't entirely true, I'm totally man enough to admit that I've fallen short before. That's only human. But I definitely think that right now where we are, I'm more than happy to fight for the people more than ever, especially with how bad allegations of corruption are getting in the entire state, from government agency to government agency. I mean, it's been my platform from the start, and I'm going to keep delivering on it.
Cash Killer Fox!
Cash Killer Fox!
That's what
Oh,
I'm saying.
yeah.
Thanks, babes.
Oh, yeah. And so to clarify, are you stating that it wasn't the duties of the people weren't quite important enough the first time you ran?
Never said that. You're kind of just digging at different questions like that. Everyone is important to me all the time. To directly address the allegations of my absenteeism, I'm more than happy to tell you that I voted on my conscience with every bill that was put in front of me. And bills that I tried to push were very much stalled in Congress because of how everyone else was trying to push their agenda and didn't take me seriously because of what I stand for. I think it's pretty reflective of the way the government views people who want to stand up against authority and fucking break the system that has been built up to keep people in high castles.
Absolutely. I apologise if you think I was digging there, mate.
It's okay,
I was just
Nigel.
trying to get a bit of a clarification.
No, it's okay. You're
Candidate
cute.
Keller.
You get away with it.
All right.
It's fine.
Thank you, mate. All right. And Candidate Storm, if you have any direct responses to anything that Mr. Keller has stated, if not, we could be moving on.
Well, there's not much I can say really about that question, but I do respect Mr. Keller for,
Thanks.
taking initiative, and I believe that people are capable of change. So hopefully, he's serious about it. He seems
Absolutely.
serious. But,
Absolutely. I do commend you taking responsibility there in your response, Mr. Keller. All right.
Well,
So
if I can really quick,
Yeah, you
I
can,
think it's
mate. You have the
important that
floor.
you have people like me who have been in office and have been out of office and want to be in office and have been in the public spotlight for so long. I mean, I'm not trying to say that I'm like the only badass on stage here, but I think that I am certainly one of the only people who's actually openly admitting to mistakes and taking accountability for problems that we see in our government.
Sure thing. And as I stated, quite commendable of you, mate. All right. Absolutely.
Whatever.
All right. And moving back over to CNT's Alex Payne for the next question.
Thank you, Nigel.
Absolutely.
Candidate Audreyson, how do you feel about profiting from racketeering or businesses being used as criminal enterprises?
Well, I mean, I'm not really a fan of that, considering, criminal enterprises are obviously criminal. I feel like a lot of these businesses work really hard, and the people that work there deserve to be able to have like a safe work environment that's not at jeopardy because of someone else's decisions or lack of regard for their livelihood.
Okay. Candidate Keller, any direct questions there for that?
Not a question, but
Mhm.
my response to the question is
Mhm.
as follows. Fuck crime. You can't make crime go away, though. I completely condemn using businesses for racketeering and criminal enterprises, and there's certainly a lot of it going on that a lot of people clearly don't see, myself included. And that's something that we need to get better on without overreaching from the government side to invade people's privacy and rights. I think that it's important we try to make... Are you familiar with Dungeons and Dragons? It's like, character archetypes and stuff. It's like if you take like chaotic neutral and make that lawful good as best as you can, I think we'll be in a better place in society. Equity and shit.
Okay.
Absolutely. Great responses from our candidates here so far. And moving on a line of questioning here. Back to you, Candidate Cash Keller.
What's up?
As a state representative, if elected, how would you boost the safety of the people of San Andreas? A city where a state, I apologize, where last reports show roughly 70 violent crimes are committed each week.
Well, a couple plans. First, I want to see that we have more press conferences to keep the police accountable and keep everyone informed. It's really good that you're using these statistics. I don't know how exactly accurate they are, but knowing that there are 70 violent crimes happening so frequently is obviously a problem. I want people to be safe. I want us to live in a world where, we are abject of good people trying to at least be less shitty than they were before. So, plans to discuss that, to reconcile different between victim and offender, and to work to have the police be doing their job without overreaching in their power, so that we have a system and a justice system that brings people to justice by rehabilitating rather than only pushing for penitence and punishment. I think that'll combat crime itself when you know that people aren't necessarily having to worry about having their ass completely handed to them. Having a system where they can actually be allowed to recover, apologize, and work towards reparations.
Absolutely. And as state representative, you believe you'll be able to work with, the police department and without too much overreach, be able to bring the folks of San Andreas some pacification to these violent crimes?
At the bare minimum, I'll be a great fucking mediator. I mean, I'm a rock star, but
Oh,
I want
yeah.
to strive for even more.
Absolutely. Thank you for your response, Mr. Keller. And Candidate Storm, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I do. So I'm a huge advocate for victims' rights. That's a topic that I touch on a lot whenever people are asking me, why am I in this race? Because I feel like most people who are victims of crimes get left at that victim stage and they don't feel justice. So I feel like there needs to be more accountability to law enforcement to help make sure that justice is being served and that people are made aware that, hey, these dangerous people that are causing harm to just normal everyday people are being dealt with and not being allowed to just run around and wreak havoc. So that's definitely a big part of my campaign in general.
I'd also, if I can add on to something, I hard agree with that entire thing. But I think it's also important that we work towards advocating for increased mental health awareness and actually allowing criminals and those in the prison system, as we work towards developing the Department of Corrections, to actually be able to reach therapists and talk to people about their problems. I mean, I guarantee you that maybe 35 out of those 70 crimes are occurring because people aren't stable. And they can't be stable in a system where people are getting elected and betraying their interests. People are lying to them. People are shooting at them. People are completely robbing them and taking. And there's just absolute insanity everywhere around. So it's really important that we allow people to actually have someone to talk to for that rehabilitation.
Absolutely. And we appreciate your responses here this evening from both of you candidates as well. So I'll send it back to you, Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Nigel. Candidate Audrey Storm. Next question. Do you allow your family, friendship, financials, or inside knowledge to affect your actions?
I do not. I pride myself on being impartial as far as like my former law enforcement career or whenever I'm treating patients. It's not about how I feel about people or how other people feel about me or what connections I have or they have. I'm here to do a job. So when I was a cop, my job was to protect and serve. As a nurse, my job is to help people heal. So I put that stuff way ahead of any personal connections I may or may not have.
Okay. Anything to add, Candidate Keller?
Yeah. I am partial. I'm partial to those who hate authority and the way that the authority has been overstepping for years on end now, especially in this state in its infancy as we continue to develop into a more civilized society. If we're going to develop into a civilized society, let's fucking do it right, for God's sake. So yeah, I'm partial. I'm impartial when it comes to actually standing for people. I don't care who they are, what walk of life they come from. I don't care about race, color, creed, sexuality, or anything. You're fucking San Andrean, and I stand for you. And I'm going to be that way until I die. I don't care if I get elected or not. But I also want to add that I think it's really telling, first of all, for two reasons. One, who is actually serious on this stage, because I only see two candidates here that actually bothered to show up for this fucking debate. Two, I want to note that this is a big thing that I've been trying to advocate for a long time, but I'm not a sellout, and I'm not accusing everyone of being a sellout. But I certainly think it's pretty telling when someone's backed by an organization that wants to put them in power, especially when they've been in a group that's been surrounded by allegations of corruption with leaked tapes, etc. I don't need to go into specifics, but I think we all know what I'm talking about. And I think that in general, for candidates beyond who's standing on this stage, I think it's important that people actually consider that when they're going to the voting booths.
Okay. On to you, Nigel. C&D.
Absolutely, candidate Keller. Back to you, and it seems to be a little bit of a platform of yours with this next question here. So I believe you'll be able to field it with ease. But please
whatever.
share with us this evening your views on the size of government as it continues to expand in the state of San Andreas.
It's pretty simple question, pretty simple answer. Big balloons are cool, but too much air and it's just gonna pop. People like to see big balloons because, who doesn't fucking love balloons? But, in this analogy, the government's the balloon, by the way. So the more large and explosively expansive that the whole fucking thing gets, I think the worse off that we're going to see everything be in the surrounding area. Letting all that helium leak and run loose is kind of fucked. In other words, in plain English, we can't keep having government
Please.
overreach that's simply doing nothing. I'm very much opposed to having governmental oversight into a large amount of things that are completely unwarranted, and especially merging departments that have no business being together.
Would you care to elaborate on some of the departments that you have in question?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily going to just point fingers at everything directly for the sake of not being a toxic asshole. But I definitely don't think that the Department of Human Services or Health Services has to be entirely mixed with Mount Zona and everything going on there. And I also don't think that we should be merging security organizations as proposed in some legislation to see, security organizations between said departments and others completely merged and controlled by one centralized agency. I just think that that allows for way too much power for the wrong people, and we've seen a lot of people in high places have been abusing that very, very frequently. I'm a little tired of it.
Absolutely. And as state representative, this is something that you're prepared to combat.
Obviously, even without being a state rep.
Absolutely. Candidate Storm, do you have anything you would like to add?
I do. I will need you to repeat the question, but first I want to touch on what Cash just said. As far as a lot of the security, like Mount Zona, all the ones listed in the SAS bill, coming together. And I see where concern could come from. But I really believe that something like this could be successful as long as we keep the proper checks and balances in place. Because if anyone has really been to Zona as of late, the security there is not, it's just not plentiful. So I feel like something like this could be incredibly beneficial to a lot of people around the state as long as it's done properly and not given all to one person, because that leads to lack of communication, lack of delegation, and like we said, power hungry people eat that up. So we want to avoid that, but still go on with it.
Yeah, especially when you have people in leading positions in things like Mount Zona, cough, Maggie Martindale, sorry. No direct accusations, but I have heard a lot of people very dissatisfied with her work and her position as the, chief medical dude or whatever. And I think that it's time that we start calling for reform, or at least seeing more monitoring of things like that, especially the people that are in those places to make those decisions in terms of the hiring of the security and so on.
Absolutely. Fantastic responses from both candidates here this evening. All right, and moving on this evening as well, I would like to take the time now. Our associate tonight, Mr. Alex Payne with Weasel News, has had some pressing matter arise this evening and has to be exiting us tonight. So if you could please put your hands together for Mr. Alex Payne here of Weasel News, and we will be continuing the evening. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, Alex.
Can you guys fucking clap, please? Thank
you, Alex.
Thank you for the 2 people who clapped. 5 people.
All right, and we will be moving right along here this evening, all right? And I'll be posing the next question here to candidate Audrey Storm. Candidate Storm, given the news recently, how do you feel the judiciary is doing, and does it need reform?
Hmm. Whenever you say the news recently, can you be more specific?
I would say specifically
Yeah.
referring to, I would believe some of the press conferences that have happened recently. There's been some, First Amendment things going on with CNT and Weasel News.
Oh, okay. Well, I believe press conferences are good. That's how we get information out. I would be fine with more press conferences because I feel like there's a lack of transparency and communication from a lot of not only the judicial branch, but executive, legislative, our medical services. I mean, everything across the board. There needs to be a huge improvement. Um, Now, as far as the First Amendment discussion, I am all for First Amendment. I believe that as long as no one is getting hurt and it doesn't put anyone at risk, that, yeah, the news should be able to report things people deserve to know. That's the purpose of the news. And that's a big part of the freedom of speech and the First Amendment, because it shouldn't be used as a tool to hide things. The First Amendment should be used as a tool to share information to the citizens who deserve to know.
Absolutely. Appreciate your response here this evening, Candidate Storm. Mr. Keller, do you have anything you would like to add, speaking of how the judiciary is doing, or direct response to Candidate Storm's question? Statement, sorry.
What? Sorry, that last part.
I had said question, but I meant her statement. If you had a response to her statement,
It's okay, Nigel. I'm just gonna start talking.
please.
So, I personally don't really want to speak on the issues of the judiciary, especially as they are actively developing. Until that is a closed case, I'm not going to offer a direct opinion on it, especially because I'm not an elected official with the intelligence that the government would have to be able to respond to something like that. I'm not going to make accusations, but I definitely think it's important that people tune in and actually pay attention to things like press conferences so that they understand the information being fed to them. Note, everything being said to you is not always true. People should not be buying into everything as ultimate and absolute truth. So take everything that you're hearing from the government with a grain of salt, because as I've said, and as I've known, having worked in the government, people don't always tell the truth. And on the press itself reporting on the whole thing, I don't take an issue with the First Amendment rights, especially not in the Constitution. I fucking love all the rights and stuff. But I do take issue when journalism starts to become a little bit biased on an opinion. There is journalism, and then there is objective journalism, and journalism that pushes an agenda. I think it's important that people separate that from what is actually true fact.
Absolutely. I do believe that somewhere along the lines we did derail a bit there. In speaking of judiciary reform, all right. Point here at the podium. Oh, I'm sorry. We're being joined by Phineas of Weasel News here at the podium. He's going to be filling in for Alex Payne of Weasel. All right. Thank you for joining us here this evening, Phineas.
Of course, of course.
I loved you with Billie Eilish.
Oh, appreciate it. Yep. I think I see which question we're on.
All right. And so we're going to be sending it over to Phineas of Weasel News for our next question.
All right, let me just double check with you. It's legislation on ethics. Is that correct?
It would.
Maybe you could just want that.
Right, Mr. Keller, did you field the last question? I apologize. We got a little sidetracked over here.
The question about the judiciary reform?
Right, that was Miss Storm's question. So the next question is going to be coming your way, Mr. Keller.
Okay.
All right. Absolutely. According to medical services policy, one can go weeks without knowing that a loved one has passed. Do you think this is okay, Candidate Keller?
Fuck no, especially if, hospitals have a right, especially with all the money that hospitals make by charging people and whatever for all the bills, and especially given all the people that come in and out. I know that hospitals are fucking loaded. I advocated a long time ago that a lot of people in hospital staff needed a raise, and we fought for that raise, and that raise was granted. But I think that with raises come responsibilities. You have to be doing your job properly if you want to be making more money and getting more rewards for your work. I mean, that's just kind of like common sense. But, yes, I think that contact should be made immediately upon knowledge that is, completely verifiable and true, so that there isn't any false alarms or anything like that. But yes, I would like to see that continue to be expanded upon, so that people are aware of their loved ones or emergency contacts being hurt or in danger.
Absolutely. And Mount Zona and the coroner's office has had problems with this in the past. So as state representative, what do you think you can bring to the table that would be able to possibly assist them in getting over this hurdle that is preventing them from being able to get these notices out in a timely manner?
It is the job of the administrative government, as well as the hospital staff themselves and the people in general, to be pressuring people in high offices, like, say, for example, now, because we're referencing hospitals, Maggie Martindale, to make changes with their policy. It's not my job as a state representative to say, do this, do that. I will push for it, and I will ask them very kindly on behalf of the will of the people, if that is so given to me as the will of the people. I have my opinions, but I know that I represent the people above all. And if that's what they want, then I will apply political pressure as best as I can. You have the concept of the bully pulpit, where you have me on TV, and I can always call for things like that. And it goes beyond that. But I think it's really important that we strive to press for more information being spread for loved ones and those emergency contacts therein. And I think that comes with pressuring those people who are responsible for a company, or I'm sorry, not company, but rather the department policy.
Absolutely. We appreciate your response this evening, Candidate Keller. Candidate Storm, if you have anything you would like to add, any direct questions about anything that Candidate Keller has stated here.
Well, I would like to add that I understand the policy at its face value as far as, news outlets are identified or notified after a certain amount of time. But I 100% agree that the emergency contact of those people need to be notified as soon as possible. And that's another thing that has been an issue. I've been injured before and my contacts weren't contacted. I've had people that I care about where they were very seriously injured and I didn't know. I was not informed. I could only imagine what would happen if someone close to me had passed. And I didn't find out for 2 weeks, even though I was their emergency contact, because then you have to go into all the mental duress, like, could I have done anything? Could I have been there? And it's just not right to put people through that. The people who are emergency contacts are emergency contacts for a reason that needs to be respected and enforced.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can state the same to you as state representative. What do you think you can do to ease sort of Mount Zona and the coroner's office logistical issues and being able to provide this information?
Well, I was speaking with someone at the hospital the other day, one of the directors, because I was asking, who's in charge of doing this? Who is supposed to do this? And I've noticed in the city in general, a lot of answers whenever I ask those types of questions are, well, ideally, or it's supposed to be, but we don't have an ideal situation. So I want to find what works for the situation we have so we can work towards our ideal situation. I want to enforce more delegation. Maybe there needs to be changes because people have sat in positions and aren't doing what they're supposed to do, or maybe they need assistance. So I definitely would like to shake some things up and put some policies in place that really support the citizens, because I feel like right now that support just isn't there.
Absolutely. Thank you both candidates for your fantastic responses this evening. We will now send it over to Waysville News' Phineas for the next question.
All right. Miss Storm, as a representative, would you support legislation on ethics and conflicts of interest?
As it relates to anything in particular, or? Well, here, you don't need to get more specific.
No, don't answer that, Audrey. That was a very vague question. Can you please elaborate?
Would you support legislation on ethics and conflict of interest? If there was legislation proposed that involved, sort of the ethics and conflicts of interest being, prevented or, would you support that?
I feel like this question isn't very well planned, but I will answer it. And honestly, it depends on what the legislation would be, proposing, and what the people of San Andreas feel should be done about it. Because it's not just, what do I want or what does Cash want. It's about what everyone wants. We're not here representing ourselves. We're representing the people. So I couldn't give you a clear yes or no because that question was incredibly vague.
Yeah, I'm gonna respond to that too. You need to see a bill and read a fucking bill to understand whether or not you should vote for it. I think that's a given, but I just want to make sure that that's on the table and people understand that we read things.
Well,
I am in fact, contrary to popular belief, completely literate and able to read things. And I think that it's very important that we stay educated and informed, not just as representatives, but as representatives delivering votes based on the will of the people. So, of course, this comes again with opening lines of communication, having press conferences, getting open forums where people are weighing in on how they feel, and people like from our bases are able to weigh in exactly what they believe should be done and should not be done. However, on the holistic concept of ethics and preventing the conflicts of interest, I overarchingly support that for the particular reasons of I'm anti-authority and anti-overreach. If there's going to be conflicts of interest, then what the hell is the point of the government?
Absolutely.
If not to exploit the people.
Thank you for responses this evening from both candidates. I'm sorry that question was a bit vague, all right, but we have gone through it. We'll move on to the next, all right? All right, and so back to you, candidate Keller. How do you feel about the San Andreas Security Act? It adds another government office.
Yeah, like I said, I kind of alluded to this in prior responses, but simply put, I'm not necessarily in favor of adding another level of bureaucracy that A, is not tried and tested, and B, is something that we just don't know enough about to be able to support yet, especially with how I believe we're referencing that bill that would merge the security organizations.
Absolutely.
Yeah, still no. Again, I don't know why we need to keep centralizing things, especially when we've seen that centralized agencies and government are just not doing their goddamn job. Simply put, thanks.
Absolutely. Candidate Storm, do you have anything you would like to add or any direct responses to Candidate Keller's statement?
No, I think I'd just like to reiterate what I touched on earlier, where I think if executed correctly and the checks and balances are put in place, this could be beneficial for all of the agencies that would be involved with it. But it has to be very closely watched so it doesn't become like the other services that are completely just, some might say, falling apart at this point. And we would obviously like to avoid that as much as possible.
Are you able to add, as state representative, how would you like to see this implemented properly, if I could ask that?
Well, like I said, there would have to be the proper checks and balances. So not one person overlording the entire thing. There needs to be a person or even multiple people at the top. It is compiling very different security sectors, I guess we could say. So people with experience could be in different positions, and there shouldn't just be one person in power. It should definitely be multiple people so that it's not just my way or the highway.
Absolutely. And thank you for your response, Ms. Storm. Send it back over to Weasel News' Phineas.
All right, let me. I got some further clarification on the last question. Let me see if this helps at all. So there are currently no laws on conflicts of interest in the government or rules of ethics on the books. I believe it was proposed by Bex Lawson and it wasn't passed. Would you specifically support new laws? And also, do you feel it necessary to bring forward legislation about this?
Well, we would have to read the proposed legislation, like Cash said already. We're not going to say, oh yeah, we would support that without seeing what's in it, because you could say, oh, it's this, but then when we look at it, it could be interpreted a completely different way.
Right. Okay. I'll move on to the next question for candidate Storm. would you support a decrease in UBI and pay rate to offset inflation?
Well, I would say that that's not something I could immediately answer right now because I'd have to really sit down and look at the numbers and see what would be most beneficial and helpful, um, and see what other options there are, and also how the people feel about it. Because like I said before, I'm not going to make decisions based on just what I want. If I were to be elected, of course, it's about what everyone wants and trying to find something that works for more people than not.
Of course, of course. Candidate Keller, did you have anything to add on that?
Yes. I'd be the voice of reason for this one and say absolutely fucking not. First of all, trying to deflate an economy that is already having a problem with inflation just A, doesn't work, B, widens a wealth gap, and C, just per basic economics, doesn't work in terms of helping people not do crime. I mean, if you are literally allowing people to make less money based on their income as of present with an inflating economy, we're only going to see that they're going to turn to crime to be able to sustain themselves. And again, this is kind of like the opposite of what the fuck we're trying to accomplish as government officials. So, like I said, I'm more than happy to support the voice of the people, but like there has to come a point where we need to be rational in terms of things. And I'm pretty sure that most people will tell you that they don't want to make less money and reduce the UBI. So I'm pretty sure that they're pretty much in line with what I'm saying. But, I'll fact check that, and, if elected, we'll reevaluate this and I'll see what I can do.
Of course, of course.
It's very nicely worded, Cash.
Thanks.
Fantastic response, absolutely. And I'll be fielding the next question here to candidate Keller.
So,
what do you consider to be an impeachable offense, candidate Keller? Please elaborate.
a violation of ethics, a conflict of interest, being completely infirm or unfit for office. Gosh, I can't really think of anything else. Maybe being a general asshole that can't do their job right, even if that doesn't even. I mean, this is kind of infirm. Just general ineptitude is complete grounds for removal from office.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Miss Storm, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, besides the obvious like treason, major felonies, bribery, corruption, honestly, it's kind of like a relationship. If there's any type of betrayal of trust, to where if you can't trust someone representing you, what good are they? Right? They won't voice your concerns. You can't trust them to do what's right. Then I think that's definitely. Depending on what's happened to lead up to that point, could be something that could deem someone, fit for impeachment.
Absolutely. And thank you to both of you candidates. All right. We'll send it back over to Phineas for our next question of the evening.
All right. This one will be again for candidate Storm. If you could pass one bill into law before the next term, what would it be?
I would pass a bill on victims' rights. By that, if you're not familiar with what I mean by that, something
Please
that would say
elaborate, Ms.
that
Storm.
victims would have the right to find out, if the person who assaulted them, for example, say I got punched in the face at a clothing store and the person ran off. Cops caught that person. I, as the victim, deserve to know that that person was caught. And if there is a trial or anything, I deserve to know about that trial and to attend if I see fit to watch the justice system play out. I want people to feel safe and like they matter to everyone else and they're not just loot boxes for criminals. So that would definitely be my first focus. If I could write a bill and pass it today, victims' rights would be number one on my list.
Of course, great answer. Absolutely. Candidate Keller, would you like to touch on that question?
Yes, my political platform and agenda have been made quite clear. I'm very much anti-authority, and I've also explained to you that I am largely in favor of what the people are in favor of. Generally, my political agenda and bills that I want to push are reliant on what people tell me they want to see in the world. But one thing that is at the absolute core of my heart that I want to see is prison reform and the actual fixation thereof. Now, this might sound contradictory to what I've been saying, but establishing properly and outfitting the Department of Corrections to be able to effectively do their job, and including mental health awareness and inclusion, is one of the greatest keys, I think, to fighting crime and absolutely stopping so many drastically increasing crime rates in the state. People need a support system, and when they're going to do things like crime, at least we have something that will offer them a chance at retribution.
Of course, of course. Great answer. I will pass it back over for the next question.
Well, we have made it through our round of questioning for both these candidates for the evening, all right? And so we'll be taking the time now to offer both candidates 2 minutes for a closing statement this evening, all right? And we will start with you, candidate Storm, if you would like to address your constituents. We are live this evening, and you have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Yeah, well, first, I would like to thank everyone for coming out and for the news outlets for putting this on, and Cash Keller for showing up, along with myself, obviously, but it would be very boring if there was only one of us here. I encourage everyone to ask the candidates questions at any time. I know I'm more than willing to stop and have a conversation, and from what I know of Cash, he is as well. But just make sure that you're voting for the candidate who you believe will fight for you, and is most in line with your beliefs, because we all want the same thing. We want to make life here for everyone good. There's just some people are willing to do more than others to make that happen.
Absolutely well stated, candidate Storm. Thank you very much for your closing statements, all right?
Of course. Mr. Keller, would you like, if you could please provide us with a 2 minutes closing statement?
Yeah, whatever. I came over here a year ago with absolutely no money to my name, with a bus that was out of gas when I was out of money, and had nothing but myself and a small community of people who were completely struggling to make it in this state. Since then, I've had my fair share of running with different businesses, different government organizations, and even attaining elected office. I've always viewed myself as a rock star, but there's one thing that I will always stand for above good fucking music and fun and occasional weed. It's rights. I want people to be able to live in this state, one that a year ago was full of hope and building anew, the new horizon where the sun rises, into now a day where so many San Andreans feel like the sun is setting and we are in the twilight zone. To that, I'm going to say no more. I understand that I've been in office before, and maybe I wasn't that great for a lot of people. I will always fight for what I believe in, and I will always fight for the people that I love the most, and that is always everyone, even assholes. It's time we start reforming, and it's time we start building a state that we can trust and feel safe in. That's what I'm here for.
Of course. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. We appreciate both of you candidates joining us this evening, all right? And we do wish you the best here on the rest of the campaign trail of the special election and in the polls, all right? Very good luck to both of you, and thank you very much.
Whatever.
Ladies and gentlemen, and that does conclude our special election
Good luck,
coverage
Audrey.
this evening,
Yeah,
brought to you by the
Christian,
Election
great.
Commission in association with CNT and Weasel News. For Phineas Radcliffe here to my right with Weasel News, I have been Nigel Worcestershire of CNT, and this has been Special Election Debate Night. Thank you very much for joining us, and please tune in